I always think about the principle of stewardship, stewarding relationships. I like to say everything in the kingdom is relational, and so I think even him being featured on that song, there's something to be said about stewarding relationships, and you just never know what God's going to do.
Between the Grooves is hosted by James Kurtis, music director and morning man in the Greater Toronto Area on Joy Radio. Hosts James Kurtis talk to artists and industry insiders to discover the connection between music and faith. You can connect with the show at faithstrongtoday.com/betweenthegrooves or via Twitter @betweengrooves.
Episode 224. Welcome to Between the Grooves. It's your look at music, ministry, and everything in between with today's top Christian artists. Grab your coffee or tea and join in. He was signed to Gotee Records just as the pandemic was hitting. Richlin is our guest today. We'll find out about his musical journey, if the pandemic affected his career plans, talk musical styles, and a whole bunch more. Here's Richlin on Between the Grooves. I guess first off, can you tell us a little bit about how music started for you in your life? Did you grow up in a musical family, or is it something that you picked up in school, or what happened?
Yeah, I love that question because it always brings me back to growing up, listening to my dad play music. My dad was super musical. To this day, still plays the steel guitar.
Oh, nice.
The pedal steel, not like a dobro lap, guitar, but I played a Deckley steel guitar. And so I grew up on everything country music. And so I was around that and just fell in love with it. My dad taught me how to play, 4 chords on a guitar, and then it was just kind of off to the races after that. So I was always around music, whether it was my dad or church. My mom was my youth pastor, and so she, once I was of age, so to speak, whatever that means, I started leading worship, at our local youth group. So I was always around music, and when I think, I love that question because it just takes me back to that period of time where you're young and just so many memories associated with mom and dad and music.
I'm not going to hold the country music against you, just so you know.
It's funny because I have so many friends, they feel the same way about country music, but it's really, I grew up on a ranch. And so when I hear certain songs from the 90s, it takes me back to being at a branding with my dad, bringing a hot iron to my dad as he's branding calves, or being in the truck feeding calves in the winter. And so when I hear certain songs, again, it just takes me back to my childhood. So I can't hate on country music because it was a literal part of my childhood, but I get it. I totally get it.
I don't really hate on it. I will say my first radio job, of all things, was at a country radio station. So there's that, and that's
Nice.
That's me going into it, not really listening to country music, and now having to play the stuff. It was kind of, here you go, in your face, whether you like it or not, here's what you're doing. So
Yeah.
I got very familiar with the artists and got to chat with a few of them, and it's not all bad. I guess the era for me was, it was just before the transition to quote unquote the new country, which is, just more of a pop sound. And so
Right.
I was actually working at a radio station that wasn't playing that new sound much yet. And so it was, the Oak Ridge Boys and, that's the first name that comes to mind. There was a Clint Black and all those other
Right.
guys. So,
Right.
and I don't, remember any of the songs. I had to do what forced me to get familiar with the music was I had to do a feature every day, and it was 6 songs by an artist, and it usually was, new album or new music that they'd come out with. And so it was kind of a little story, talking, play 6 songs back to back. It was called the Six Pack. So that's, country music, 6 pack, that sort of thing.
Right.
And so, it was 3 songs, a commercial break, and then 3 songs, and you'd have to talk about the songs or talk about the artist or whatever else. So it kind of forced me doing that on a daily basis. It forced me to get familiar with the artists and make sure I pronounced their name correctly and everything else. So.
My dad's band was named after Clint Black's big song called Killin' Time.
Oh, yeah.
So Killin' Time was my dad's band. So, you mentioned Clint Black, that he was a staple in our house, man, for years.
Right, a staple. I like the way you say that, You got to have the potatoes, but no, we got Clint Black.
That's right. That's right.
So you grew up listening to country music. I guess you enjoy country to a certain extent because it's not really your style of music.
Yeah, I grew up. I'd say when the times, I guess is the best way to say it, that I would listen to country music would be in the truck with my dad, on the school bus. On my way to school, we were bused 35 minutes to school one way, and there was only one radio station that we had access to, and that was a local station that was about an hour and a half away. And then obviously just listening to my dad play music. But I grew up on obviously everything CCM, and then I was an athlete, and so I would, I'd smuggle hip hop records into the house without mom and dad knowing it. And rock.
They do now. They do now.
They do now. The cat is out of the bag. The secret's out. But so no, I like to say I grew up on everything, but in my house, I was allowed to listen to CCM and country music.
Well, your parents can't be upset at you if you're listening to Christian music, right?
No.
Right. So you just, Mom, it's Christian. It's a Christian song.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So where did that transition to recording music, I guess? Recording music and ultimately getting signed to Gotee Records? Yeah,
so I've been in the local church serving on staff for over 10 years. And as a worship pastor / associate pastor. And so I would write songs for years, for the church to sing. But I grew up about an hour and a half from a guy named Ryan Stevenson.
Never heard of him.
Never heard of him. Right.
Kidding.
Never heard of him. So I grew up in a little town called Paisley. He grew up in a town called Bonanza. And when I was 12, we met at a church camp every summer, and he's about 6 years older than me. So I was a camper, and he was like a camp cook, / cabin leader at that time.
Right.
But we just stayed in touch, and he was constantly writing songs. In fact, he went to school in Eugene, Oregon with guys like Sean McDonald, Paul Wright. There was a bunch of Eugene boys that were super musical. Matt Carney was kind of a part of that crew. And we just stayed in touch, great friends. And while he was, I believe it was when he was between BEC and Gotee, I just started sending him songs. And we stayed in touch that way. Long story short, he gets signed to Gotee. And it was just a few years ago, really, when he took a few of my songs to the team, showed them to our A&R guy, showed them to Toby at Gotee, and the rest is history. Is
it ultimately Toby's decision who gets signed?
100%. Yeah. I mean, other people, can show music, but Toby's the boss, Yeah. So,
because he must get lots of stuff sent his way, and he's a busy guy as it is. And if you look at the roster that Gotee has, it's quite diverse, isn't it?
Very much so. But that's the beauty of Gotee. They've always kind of had an independent streak to them. And I grew up listening to everything Gotee. So from Reliant K to Sonic Flood, Jason Upton, Jennifer Knapp. I loved Gotee to begin with. And they've always been super eclectic, with the roster and the different acts that they've partnered with. And so I just think that's kind of the spirit of the label.
If you could collaborate with any artist other than Ryan, of course, and it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody with Gotee, who would it be?
Not someone, just anybody, huh?
Yeah,
Wow,
anybody
that's
does, because a lot of times you see these collaborations happen within a label, right? And that's fairly easy to do, right? I'm talking
Sure.
about somebody that's, with another label, perhaps, where
Yeah.
it's sometimes a little bit more difficult to coordinate stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'd have to say that maybe a couple, maybe Sonny from POD. I was a big POD fan. Man, that's a great question. I'd have to think about that. As far as maybe a Gotee alum, I'd probably say Grits. Get the boys back and get them on something. But those are the two I can think of off the top of my head.
I was thinking you were going to say something like Zach Williams or something.
Zach's great.
Yeah.
Oh, Zach's awesome.
Yeah. Or what about Kane?
They're great. I mean, they're a great young group. I love that they're siblings.
Yeah.
What a cool story. You don't see that every day.
And they're pretty down to earth too. We've had them on the show, and Zach as well, and a bunch of others. And in fact, we, believe it or not, spoke with Ryan Stevenson a few years back. So we'll get him back as well and see what he really thinks about you.
That's right. He won't hold back, man. He won't hold back.
So I guess you can credit him for getting you introduced to Gotee Records then.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Whose idea was it to do the collaboration on the song that we started playing on the radio here in Toronto was Love Like Thunder. And
thank you, by the way.
Oh, no problem. A lot of times, because I'm also the music director, so a lot of times it's brand or name recognition. So
sure.
The fact that, it's Love Like Thunder by Richlin featuring Ryan Stevenson, well, that perks my interest right away versus featuring somebody I've never heard of before, right? And
right,
I think that's brilliant, the way record labels or artists, especially a new artist, comes to the table and presents themselves that way because it's again, that brand recognition. It's a lot easier to get recognized by a radio station or by just the general listener when they see a name they recognize already.
100%. No, I think one, it was smart, to what you were alluding to, but two, having the history that he and I had together. I think we were both, I just think it was in a conversation where we thought, what, how cool would it be for our first single, first release, at least to radio, if we were on this together. And so, I think whenever I think about our story, how it's intertwined, I always think about the principle of stewardship, stewarding relationships. I like to say everything in the kingdom is relational. And so I think even him being featured on that song, there's something to be said about stewarding relationships. And you just never know what God's going to do with certain relationships. And so, I always love to reference, I think it's 1 Corinthians 4 or 2 Corinthians 4. Paul says he's a steward of the mysteries of Christ. And I just think it's such a beautiful thing when we can all take inventory of certain relationships and know, hey, if we steward these, whether it's, there's going to be breakthrough for us, breakthrough for them. God does things through relationships. And so I like to encourage people, man, steward the relationships that God's given you, because you never know what he's going to do.
I guess my comment to that is I understand what you're saying with steward the relationships, but don't abuse the relationship, because
100%.
A lot of people might think, well, if I were in your shoes, I'd be, Ryan, let's do this for me. Right. And that's
right.
It's a one-way thing,
Right. And that's to steward a relationship. It's just that it's a relationship. God knit the heart of David and Jonathan. And so when you're connected at a heart level and you love one another and you're intentional and communicating, and that's relational. The other one is more of a transactional relationship that you would refer to. And I think we're all discerning enough to know the difference. And
well, I think we know the difference. I don't think we necessarily keep the difference in mind.
No doubt.
I've got a friend of mine who works in the car business. He's a service manager, and he's a good friend of mine, and I will call him to see how he's doing. Whereas I know there's other people that call him whenever they have problem with their car.
Right.
Right.
Yep. There you go.
And that just bothers me because he's a busy guy, and they only call him when they have a problem, and they're expecting a deal. And my thought is, that's just a one-way relationship. It's not really a relationship. Right. It's just a one-way, whatever you want to call it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yep. It's good. It's good.
How does it feel to already have been nominated for a Dove Award?
Yeah, that was fun. It was pretty wild. The fun thing, my team didn't even know. In fact, somebody said, "Hey, I think you were nominated for a Dove Award," and I checked it out, and sure enough, I was. So I was the one that broke the news to my team, management and label, and generally it's the other way around. But it was obviously a great honor, and pretty surreal. Your
label must have been embarrassed if it was you that brought it to them. I mean, really,
I think it was like a group text that I sent out to my management and my label saying, "Hey, did we just get nominated?" And a few minutes later, good night, we did. So
yeah, I'd just like to be the person who's in charge of monitoring that sort of stuff. I'd like to see the look on his face. It's like, oh, I should have caught that. Did you notice it yourself, or someone told you?
I believe someone told me.
That's even worse.
Well, I live out in the mountains of Central Oregon, so I'm not, in the
that's a good
bubble,
excuse.
The industry bubble, so to speak. So I get to, get my hands dirty with my kids out here in the dirt and play, so it's kind of refreshing,
How often do you get to Nashville, where the hub of the music industry seems to be happening?
I'm back there quite often. So there's not a direct flight from Central Oregon to Nashville, Tennessee. So it's a full day, travel, and we do roll out there. But I'm back there on a regular basis.
That's a long trip.
It is, man. It's a long one for sure.
I was just looking on the weekend. My wife and I, now that things are opening up and whatnot, I'd love to go away somewhere. And we actually had a trip booked, and it got canceled because the airline said they're not traveling on certain days, and the trip was booked on that particular day. So I got my money back, which is great, but I'd still like to go away somewhere. So on the weekend I was just scrolling, as people do on their phones, and years and years ago I went on a mission trip to Argentina, and it's just a beautiful country. The people are beautiful, and I thought, wouldn't it be nice to go there just on a spur of the moment trip? And I was looking online, and it's a full day. There's no direct flight there either. You're taking at least 2 flights, and the changeover, the crossover is like hours in between. Like, it's a full day, and I'm thinking, if you only have a week or two to book for a vacation, it's if you're going to spend a day traveling there and a day back, it's kind of a bummer. But yeah, it's one of these things where if it's a long trip, you got to do what you got to do. So I don't think I'm going to be doing that trip, but I'd like to do the Nashville thing one day, and I think that's a direct flight. So.
Oh, yeah, good. You got to take advantage of that.
Yeah. Do you go down with your family? I shouldn't say down, but do you go with your family?
My wife's been out. I haven't got my kids out there yet. They're still really young.
Right.
And so, but eventually we'll get them all out there, and they'll get the Southern experience.
How young is young for your kids?
So I have 9, 8, 6, and 3. So we're
are they at the age now where they're appreciating music and have their favorites?
They love music. Yeah, they're making noise all day long, whether it be on the piano or guitar,
right.
Or just having music blare. We got our kids a radio, and so their radio is blasting in the bedroom nonstop. So yeah, they're all about music, man.
So maybe that's the trip when you do go to Nashville, is try and coordinate get-togethers with some of their favorite artists, just to make it
no doubt.
A nice trip for them,
No doubt.
Just takes a little bit of coordination, but I mean, it's worth it to see their facial expression. I remember going to a music festival and took my wife and kids along, and I had to introduce somebody to the stage, so I had access to backstage, and I took my kids back there, and I think it was my daughter wanted to meet Britt Nicole, but the timing didn't work out because of security and everything else. but I went back there. I was introducing Danny Gotee to the stage, and I remember distinctly we had been communicating back and forth, messaging back and forth, and I'd said, let's get together or something, and he didn't respond. When I was there, he was there a couple of days after I showed up, and I'd said, let's get together for a coffee or something like that. And he never responded. And then when I went onto the stage, I was backstage. He's back there. He's got his in-ears and he's testing his mic. So I thought, okay, I'm not going to bug him right now. So I go to introduce him. And while I'm introducing him, my phone is buzzing in my pocket. And when I get off stage, it was him texting me back while I was introing him, and he'd already finished his check on his mic. He says, yeah, meet me backstage afterwards. So I was able to take my kids back, and, they were, that was kind of second best for my daughter. She wanted to meet, Britt Nicole, but she got Danny Gotee. She got a picture, and then he was busy, and I forgot to get a picture with him and my son, and my son was pretty ticked off at me.
I'm sure you made it up to him.
I probably bought him an ice cream or something like that.
Right.
That's good enough for him. Anything food. So.
Oh, I love it.
So, how often do you get out on the road to do concerts and stuff?
Well, I mean, I was released as a new artist in the midst of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And so everything was really shut down in 2020. We had a fall run last year with Ryan Stevenson and Tasha Layton, which was great to be able to get out and connect with people. Mm-hmm. And so we're just, continuing to put stuff together. So we have a song on radio right now that just went out. And so we're still trying to get after it, man.
The pandemic was definitely a setback career-wise for many people. Did it affect yours? Like, did you guys have plans in place for where you were headed as an artist? And what, I guess, over the last couple of years, what did you do differently because of that?
I get that question all the time. And I look at it, one, as, God makes all things work for the good of those that love him and are called according to his purpose. And to me, I had at the time a 2-year-old little girl. So our first 3 are boys, and then we finally got the caboose, the princess, we're done. And so to have that time at home with her at that age was just really, really special because they grow so fast. And I was also on staff at a local church at the time. So I always tell people that first year, there were things that were obviously unfortunate about the year, and it was tough for so many people. But for us, it was just a beautiful time for us to really just plant roots as far as spending time together as a family, watch my kids grow. As a parent, they grow so fast. And especially at that age, it was such a beautiful time for us to really just enjoy time together as a family. So I don't look at that as a season lost. Right. Or time lost. And so I believe God redeems the time and seasons. And so we're just really excited for what lies ahead.
Yeah. I recall for myself when I was out of radio. So I was in radio. I got out of radio for a number of years and then got back in again. When I was out of radio, I was working for a company, and we had just secured a big contract in Montreal with a big aerospace manufacturer. And we were basically ready to go live selling them stuff, and then 9/11 hit. And of course, that impacted the airline industry. All the flights were canceled for a few days. And then even after that, things slowly started climbing forward. And, people were asking me, so how did that affect business? And I looked at it and say, well, didn't actually affect business because we didn't have that business yet. We hadn't started doing business. So 9/11 hits, and then we start doing business. Well, that's all new business for us. So we did very, very well, right? Because it was all something we didn't, enjoy. But now if we had started doing business 6 months earlier and we were enjoying that level of business for 6 months and then 9/11 hit, well, yeah, that would have impacted us. But this was all new business for us. So it didn't impact us. And so for you in your career, you getting signed in the middle of a pandemic, really it's not affecting you as much as perhaps people at the label, and what can they do differently, and how can they market their people and market their artists and try to line up, concerts and stuff. It might have been a good thing because you're probably not going as frantic or as busy as, right out of the gate than you would have.
No doubt.
Right? If the pandemic didn't hit. So, yeah.
That's right.
Like you said, you got to spend time with your family and stuff. And, a lot of people look at the pandemic as a negative thing. I think it's, and there are a lot of negative aspects, but there's some positives out of it all too, right?
That's right.
People changing their priorities, with family and church and whatever else,
Right. That's right. I agree.
I didn't, I still had to go into work every day. And I was sharing, I got asked by a church that I used to attend, I got asked to do a career thing with them, being interviewed on camera about my career and trying to encourage kids to, pursue whatever they want to pursue. And one of the things, first of all, I said to him, do what you want to do, like do what you enjoy doing. Otherwise, it's going to be work and you won't enjoy doing it. But I said in that same interview, I was a little jealous. Like they asked me the pandemic question, like, how did it affect you? And it didn't affect me in one way because I was still going to work every day, right? I still had to show up and do the morning show. But it did affect me in another way. I felt very annoyed and upset that my coworkers got to stay home.
Sure.
Right? Like I was the only guy at the radio station, but they get to stay home, so they don't have to commute. So they've saved themselves X amount of dollars or X amount of time in commute time, but they've also saved themselves in gas. And I still had all those expenses. I would have loved to stay home. So I was a little ticked off about that. But
sure.
But, in hindsight, I got to go to work every day, right?
Right. Right.
And I, it was quiet at work. I didn't have anybody bugging me and stuff, and I got to do my job and do it to the best of my ability. So there's positive and negatives, but I think if you can take a situation like the pandemic and see what positive came out of it, and for your career, it might have been the best thing for you.
That's right. That's right. No, that's good.
Have you got gigs and concerts planned for the summer?
We're booking right now.
Yeah.
We're booking right now. So,
well, things are definitely optimistic. And are you, like, I guess the big thing in the summertime is all the summer festivals, right?
Yeah, summer festivals, and then we also have there's different radio events that are lined up right now, and so we're the summer will be full for sure.
Yeah. And will your family get to join you on some of that stuff, or?
We're going to try. We're going to try, man. So it's always a haul, when you have a family of 6 on the opposite side of the country, but we'll try to get out together.
Yeah. The nice thing about a lot of the summer festivals is that it will sometimes happen at a amusement park of some sort.
Right.
And when you do take the family along, there's their entertainment. They may not want to see you in concert, but they'll go on all the roller coasters, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yes, sir.
The only problem with that, of course, is that your wife's stuck with the kids the whole time while you're doing sound check. Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, she's the one with the full-time job. That's for sure. She's stay-at-home mom. She homeschools as well.
Yeah.
And so she's a legend, man.
Yeah. I don't know if I could ever do that.
It takes a grace. It takes a special grace for sure.
Yeah. And to see them all day long, like for some parents, we've, just recently finished up what's called March break in Canada, where the kids are off for a week. It's like spring break, I guess, for college and university students. And a lot of times you'll hear the parents complaining midway through it, where it's like, I can't wait for them to go back to school again. I need the break. And your wife doesn't get that luxury, does she?
Right. Nope. She's in the trenches, so to speak, with them every day. But again, she loves it. She knew that's what she wanted to do when we first got married, and so she's great at it. And the kids love being home. The homeschool piece of it all, which is pretty great. Something
that you have said. And I'll just quote it here. This is part of a larger quote, but I'm just going to take the one sentence here is, I want to create something that is synergistic with reaching people in their 20s and people in their 50s. How do you go about doing that? That is a huge spread.
Yeah, I mean, music's beautiful, right? At the end of the day, communication is connection. Music is connecting with people, and I grew up on such a eclectic sound, so to speak, that I want to engage the different genres that I grew up listening to. Mm-hmm. But two, I believe that God he has a heart for the generations. And I believe, when there's a generational synergy, when we have a mind for each and every demographic, if it's authentic in an artist or in a person, then I think it's great to try to craft music that's going to engage and appeal to everyone. So if you listen to a Richlin record, which we'll have a full record coming out this fall, you're going to hear everything from hip hop, pop, to pop country, to stuff that you would hear on CCM radio. And so at the end of the day, it's really, I love music because it gives us an opportunity to trumpet the knowledge of God, who he is, who we are in him. And so, and I believe we need to, as artists, have a heart to also write for the younger generation. And so that's, I'd like to think that's part of our mission is to try to reach as many people as possible.
I like when albums come out and every song sounds completely different. Like you mentioned, all the different genres within the CCM genre that's going to be on the album. It kind of reminds me of Queen. Right? Where the album, like you listen to every track and it's like every track is completely different and brilliantly done. And I found, and I mentioned this briefly once in the last little bit about crossover music. Like there's so much crossover happening right now just within the CCM genre. Like whether it's like a pop, hip hop to country or the pop to gospel, there's just tons of that happening right now. So what would you define as your genre?
I'll answer that question by saying that I love being a part of a label whose boss has never been afraid to put out different genres, different soundscapes. If you listen to Toby's records over the last 10 years, you're going to hear reggae, you're going to hear rock, you're going to hear R&B, obviously hip hop with the early. So I feel like Toby has given an entire generation of younger artists permission to go ahead and not just quote unquote write for radio. And so if you listen to a Richlin record, you're going to hear, you won't hear reggae, but you'll hear pop, you'll hear rock. And obviously I grew up in the middle of nowhere, cattle country. So, you'll hear like a nod, to country music, but you'll hear everything from hip hop to country. And so, cause that's just what's indigenous to me.
Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, we had some family friends, they're still family friends that had a farm, and I loved visiting the farm because we got to play in the haystacks and build forts, and it was just totally different from the city life. And I remember when they came to visit us, I didn't, as a friend and as a family friend, I didn't have much to offer them. I was just a kid, but what do you do? Like, well, let's go ride our bikes and go to the park or something like that. It was nothing like the fun that we had at the farm. They called us city slickers, and I took offense to that. Have you? Is that what you call people that live outside of your community? Do you call them city slickers?
No. I mean, now we live in a smaller town, but we have.
So you're a city slicker now.
Now, well, I wouldn't say we're in a big city. We're in a city of a population of about 2,000 people, but we do have access to a coffee shop, and there's a McDonald's 20 minutes away. Where I grew up, we were 100 miles from a Costco, so we would travel. My mom would travel 2 times a month 100 miles one way just to get groceries. And, but yeah, so no, anybody that came in from the outside, they definitely look like Billy Crystal, and Daniel Stern from City Slickers for sure.
Yeah. That's a day trip going to Costco, I guess, eh?
Yes. We spent a lot of money at Costco growing up. So I mean, my mom would bring back 6 gallons of milk and just a van load full of food. And so that was always an exciting time, being able to go unload the food when my mom finally got back to Summer Lake, the Costco.
And you said that was a couple of times a month?
Twice a month, yes sir.
Twice a month, yeah. I know everybody's got different shopping habits, and like my wife is the type of person. Now we live in the city or a suburb of Toronto, and like she could shop every day. Like, oh, something's on sale. I'm just going to swing by and pick it up. And so at the end of the week, it's like she's been to 5 different stores, and then she's exhausted. No, I'm not going to another store. I don't have any more money to spend or whatever. And that yet I know of other people that just do not go to the grocery store. I mean, it might be on sale or whatever else, but they do their shopping like clockwork, like every 2 weeks or twice a month. Or I've heard of some people just, they shop once a month. They get all their stuff. They load up the van, and then they come back. And then, obviously it's slim pickings near the end of the 4-week period right before they have to shop again. But that's just the way they budget their money. I just find that really odd because I'm so used to my wife going every other day. Oh, meat's on sale. I'm going to pick up some meat today. And bananas. They got bananas on sale. I'm going to pick up some bananas. Just like on the spur of the moment. I could never do that. I'm the planner. I'm the guy that, will do all the research and plan and stuff. And then on this particular day, that's when I'm going to get all my stuff. Get it done, all done over with in one day,
I love it. No, that's generally how we would think we would roll. But then we had 3 boys that are starting to eat us out of house and home.
Oh,
So they've kind of scrapped all of our plans. And so we're constantly making food runs.
It gets worse. It gets worse as they get bigger.
Seriously. I remember how much I ate, my brother ate. So I know we're bracing ourselves, man.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I remember when I was a kid, and I don't know how my mom did it because I remember I took my lunch to school and ate at school a lot of times. And honestly, I think I had 4 sandwiches that I packed up.
Wow.
4 sandwiches. Like that's like 2 slices of bread times 4.
Yeah.
And I was still hungry after that, like
it's all that carb loading, man.
Yeah. So you think of a loaf of bread, I mean, that would last. And I was one of 3 other kids. And we were all around the same age. So I just can imagine what my mom spent on groceries and stuff.
Right.
And milk and all that other stuff. That stuff gets pricey after a while.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So anyways, a little off topic, but what can I say? So tell us about this new album that you got on the way this fall.
Yeah, so we have a single out right now called Good Mood, and then we'll be releasing a full project this fall. And again, super eclectic. Does every song, I wouldn't say every song sounds different, but really excited about the project. I think for me, it's always about what I'm trying to say and communicate. For years, I thought I was going to be a pastor and a preacher. And so for me, music is just a beautiful vehicle for me to write something that is burning on my heart, so to speak. And so excited about this record, excited about the single that's out right now, called Good Mood. It's really just about the finished work message that Paul preached, that set me free, continues to set me free every time I get into the epistles. And so, the rest of the record will be an extension of that, and then other things that, I'm passionate about right now.
The record itself, where are you at with it? Like, is everything already recorded and just, ready to be mastered, or are you, sitting on it, or you're still recording?
We're still working on it. We're about 10 songs deep, that we really like and feel, really excited about. But we're still, stuff still needs to be mixed and still in the, the process of trying to add, a couple more.
And when you record, do you go to Nashville for that, or do you record tracks closer by and just send them off to somebody at the label and they do the rest, or what?
For the last few years, I've had a buddy here with me in Central Oregon where we would write and build together, and he just moved out to Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And so, but I'll get an idea and he'll start to work on it, and then I'll jump out, to Tennessee and cut a vocal. So, that's kind of how our rhythm works.
Right. A lot of artists end up moving to Tennessee. Do you see that ever happening with your family?
At the end of the day, our priority is to be together, and so we understand that that's where the industry is. But man, we just love Central Oregon. I've been all around the U.S. map, and there's not another place in space like Central Oregon. It's just so beautiful, and also growing up out here, so just have an affinity and for the area, and would love to raise our kids out here. So my answer to that is one day at a time. Yeah. And so we'll see. It's
always tough with kids anyways, because they get their friends, they get their, the things they're used to. And I mean, I suppose from a sense that they're homeschooled it makes it easier, but it's still tough, for my wife and I would love to live somewhere south where it's warm and hot all the time. My wife's originally from Guyana, so she likes it warm. So when we get winters in Toronto, she just whines and complains, and I'm pretty much with her and agreeing with her. And then she says, when we got married, how come we didn't move somewhere south right from the start? Because now we have kids here and we've got responsibilities. It's so much harder to uproot and go somewhere else, especially with their commitments in church and school and whatever else.
No, I get it. And out here in Central Oregon, we get like 300 days of sunshine every year.
I don't want to hear about it.
And it's not humid. In the South, it's humid. So when it's hot, it's also wet, and it's dry up here, which we love. So you need to come on out and visit, man.
I will take the humidity, though, over wind chill. Because in Toronto, in Canada, they talk about the temperature and then they say, but with the wind chill, it's this. And you just don't want to hear those numbers.
Right. No, I get that. I get that for sure.
And then everybody says, oh, it's so nice that you get snow. Yeah, no, not really. No. I'd rather be in shorts and sandals. Thank you.
Right.
Hey, listen, thanks so much for chatting. It's been a pleasure. Like I said, we're going to try and get Ryan back anyways, and I'm going to ask him what he really thinks about you, but that's another story.
Do it.
Thank you. Have an awesome day, okay?
You too, brother.
Take care. Hey, many thanks to Richlin. Make sure you check out his website, richlinmusic.com, to find the links to his music, events, and social media. Before we go, let's check in with Andrew Ripp for some artist advice.
Gosh, this is a tough one because I really know what I want to say, but I don't want to be mean. Well, maybe I don't need to explain it. Maybe I just say it. I think I do need to explain it. I think Christian music should be the most inspired, fresh, incredible music in the world. We have a line into the creator of the universe. So stop listening to other music that worked and creating a copy of it. Go to the Lord, get a word, and do what he says. That's it. It's as easy as that. Stop trying. Stop trying so hard. Go to the Lord, open your hands, and receive the gift. That's really that's our job as believers.
Wow, I like that. Stop trying to copy someone else. Be inspired. Be fresh. Hey, we'd love to hear your feedback. Be sure to leave us a rating, a question, or a comment wherever you're listening. Subscribe on your favorite app, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or iHeartRadio. We'll let you know when new episodes drop. And be sure to follow @Between Grooves on Facebook and Twitter. Until next time, have yourself an awesome day.